The ocean roared, a wild, untamed thing, but it couldn't drown out the pounding of my heart. I stood on the edge of the Santa Cruz shoreline, sand gritty between my toes, watching Liam laugh as he dodged a wave. His carefree grin, the way his blonde hair caught the sun, felt like a punch to my chest, a reminder of everything I could never say. We'd been best friends since 8th grade, Liam Carter and me, Ezra and Gwen. Growing up in the sprawling suburbs of San Jose, we'd shared everything. Late-night gaming sessions, secrets about crushes, dreams of escaping our small-town lives. But there was one secret I'd buried deep, locked away behind every joke and fist bump, the fact that I'd been in love with him for years. It was a truth I'd sworn to take to my grave, because Liam was straight, and I was just his quirky, artsy friend who happened to be gay. That summer, the summer of 2025, we were both 22, fresh out of college, and adrift in that weird limbo between youth and whatever came next. Liam had just broken up with his girlfriend, Sophie, and I was trying to figure out what to do with a fine arts degree in a world that didn't seem to care about paintings. We decided to take a weekend trip to Santa Cruz, just the two of us, to escape the suffocating heat of the valley and the weight of our uncertain futures. "Let's hit the beach, easy," Liam had said, tossing me a grin that made my stomach flip. Like old times. The beach was packed that Saturday, families and surfers dotting the shoreline, the air thick with salt and sunscreen. I'd always loved the ocean. It felt like a place where secrets could dissolve into the waves. But today, standing next to Liam, I felt exposed, like the tide might pull my truth right out of me. "Dude, you're zoning out," Liam said, nudging my shoulder. His touch was casual, but it sent a jolt through me, like static electricity. "What's up? You're not still freaking out about that gallery rejection, are you?" I forced a laugh, shielding my eyes against the sun. "Nah, just taking it all in. This place is unreal." He squinted at the horizon, his blue eyes catching the light. "Yeah, makes you feel small, doesn't it? Like all our problems are just nothing." He paused, then turned to me, his expression softening. "You're gonna be fine, Ezra. You're too talented not to make it." His words hit me harder than they should have. Liam always knew what to say, always knew how to pull me out of my head. But every compliment, every moment of closeness, was a double-edged sword. I wanted to believe he saw me, really saw me, but I knew better. He was just being Liam, the guy who'd been my anchor since we were kids, the guy who'd never see me the way I saw him. We spent the morning messing around, splashing in the shallow waves, racing each other across the sand. Liam tackled me into the water at one point, his laughter ringing in my ears as we tumbled into the surf. For a moment, it was just us, the world blurring out, and I let myself pretend that this was enough, that friendship could be enough. By noon, we were sprawled on a blanket, eating sandy PB&J sandwiches and passing a thermos of iced coffee back and forth. The sun was high, baking our skin, and I could feel the heat sinking into my bones. Liam stretched out beside me, his arm brushing mine as he propped himself up on one elbow. "You ever think about how weird this is?" he said suddenly, his voice quieter than usual. I turned my head, squinting at him. "What?" "Eating sandwiches that are basically 50% sand." He chuckled, but his eyes were serious. "No, I mean us. Like, how we're still here, doing this, after all these years. Most people drift apart after high school, you know?" My throat tightened. I wanted to say something profound, something that would capture how much he meant to me, but all I managed was, "Yeah. Well, you're stuck with me, Carter." He grinned, but there was something in his gaze I couldn't read, something that made my pulse stutter. "Good," he said softly. "I don't want you going anywhere." The moment hung between us, heavy and fragile, like sea glass caught in the tide. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap between us, but fear kept me rooted. What if I said too much? What if I ruined everything? Instead, I stood up, brushing sand off my shorts. "Come on," I said, forcing a grin. "Let's go find some tide pools or something. I'm not spending all day lying here like a beached whale." Liam laughed, jumping to his feet. Lead the way, Gwen. We wandered along the rocky edge of the beach, poking at anemones and chasing tiny crabs. The sun climbed higher, and the crowd thinned as people retreated to the shade. It was just us again, the ocean stretching out endlessly before us, and for a while, I could almost forget the ache in my chest. But then, as we climbed over a cluster of rocks, Liam slipped. I grabbed his arm to steady him, and for a split second, our faces were inches apart. His breath was warm, his eyes wide, and I swear I saw something flicker in them, something that wasn't just friendship. His hand lingered on my wrist, his fingers tightening briefly before he pulled away. "You good?" I asked, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. "Yeah," he said, but he didn't meet my eyes. "Thanks, man." The moment passed, but it left a crack in the wall I'd built around my feelings. For the rest of the afternoon, I couldn't shake the memory of his touch, the way it had felt like a question neither of us was ready to answer. As the sun began to dip, painting the sky in shades of fire, we sat on the rocks, watching the waves. Liam was quieter now, his usual energy subdued. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but I was too afraid of the answer. Instead, I let the silence stretch, the ocean filling the space between us. "Ezra," he said finally, his voice barely audible over the crash of the waves. "You ever feel like you're hiding something from everyone? Like, even the people you're closest to?" My heart stopped. I turned to him, searching his face, but he was staring at the water, his jaw tight. "Yeah," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "All the time." He nodded, like he'd expected that answer, but he didn't say anything else. And as the sun sank lower, casting long shadows across the sand, I couldn't shake the feeling that something between us had shifted, something I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The drive back to San Jose was quiet, the hum of the highway filling the space where our usual banter should have been. Liam stared out the passenger window, his profile lit by the occasional flash of passing headlights. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, trying to focus on the road instead of the memory of his hand on my wrist, the way his eyes had lingered on mine. Back at our shared apartment, the tension followed us. Our place was a cramped two-bedroom in a faded complex, filled with mismatched furniture and the faint smell of paint from my half-finished canvases. Liam flopped onto the couch, kicking off his sandals, while I headed to the kitchen to grab us beers. "You okay?" I asked, handing him a bottle. The words felt inadequate, but I didn't know how else to bridge the gap that had opened up on the beach. He took a long swig, his throat bobbing. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" I sat on the arm of the couch, trying to keep my tone light, but my heart was racing, because I could feel it, the weight of whatever he wasn't saying. He shrugged, picking at the label on his bottle. "Stuff. Sophie mostly. And other things." Sophie. Her name was like a splinter, sharp and unexpected. They'd been together for 2 years, on and off, and I'd spent most of that time pretending I was happy for them. When they broke up a month ago, I'd been secretly relieved, but hearing her name now made my stomach twist. "You miss her?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Liam's eyes flicked to mine, then away. "Not really. It's weird. I thought I would, but it's like I'm figuring out what I actually want, you know?" I nodded, even though I didn't know, not really. What I wanted was sitting right in front of me, close enough to touch, but impossibly far away. I took a sip of my beer, letting the cold bitterness ground me. "You'll figure it out," I said. "You always do." He gave me a half-smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "What about you, Easy? You've been different lately. Quieter." I froze. He'd noticed. Of course he had. Liam always noticed when I was off, even when I tried to hide it. But how could I tell him the truth? That every time he smiled at me, it felt like a wound reopening? That I was terrified of losing him if I said too much? Just stressed. I lied, forcing a grin. Art life, you know? Starving artist vibes. He didn't laugh. Instead, he leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, and looked at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "You'd tell me if something was really wrong, right?" My throat closed up. I wanted to say it, to let the words spill out. I'm in love with you, and it's killing me. But instead, I nodded. Yeah, of course. He held my gaze for a moment longer, then leaned back, breaking the spell. Good. 'Cause I can't lose you, man. You're my rock. The words were a lifeline and a cage all at once. I wanted to be his rock, his everything, but not like this. Not as just his friend. I stood up, muttering something about needing a shower, and escaped to the bathroom before he could see the truth in my eyes. The next few days were a blur of routine. Liam at his temp job at a tech startup, me sketching in our living room, trying to lose myself in charcoal and paper. But the beach lingered in my mind, a snapshot I couldn't erase. His touch, his words, the way he'd looked at me. It all felt like a puzzle I was too scared to solve. On Wednesday, Liam came home late, his tie loosened and his hair a mess. Rough day? I asked, glancing up from my sketchpad. He groaned, collapsing onto the couch. You have no idea. My boss is a micromanaging nightmare. He tilted his head back, closing his eyes. Tell me something good, easy. I need it. I hesitated, then set my sketchpad aside. Okay, I got an email from that gallery in Oakland. They want to see more of my work. His eyes snapped open, a grin spreading across his face. No way. That's huge. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I shrugged, my cheeks warming. Didn't want to jinx it. Dude, you're gonna kill it. He reached over, squeezing my shoulder, and there it was again, that spark, that unbearable warmth. We should celebrate. This weekend. You pick the place. My heart did a stupid flip. Yeah, okay. Maybe that taco truck by the park. Perfect. He stood, stretching, and for a moment, I thought he was going to say something else, something important. But he just ruffled my hair, like he used to when we were kids, and headed to his room. Night, easy. Night. I echoed, staring at the empty space where he'd been. The rest of the week passed in a haze of anticipation. I kept replaying our moments on the beach, dissecting every word, every glance. Was I imagining things, or had something changed in Liam? I wanted to believe it was possible, but hope was a dangerous thing. I'd spent years building walls to protect myself, and now they were crumbling with every touch, every smile. By Saturday, I was a mess of nerves. We headed to the park, the air warm and thick with the smell of grilled onions and cilantro from the taco truck. Liam was in a good mood, joking about his co-workers and stealing bites of my al pastor. For a while, it felt like old times, just us, laughing, uncomplicated. But then, as we sat on a bench watching kids play soccer, he grew quiet again. Easy, he said, his voice low. Can I ask you something? My stomach dropped. Sure. He hesitated, his fingers tapping against his knee. When did you know? Like that you were gay? The question caught me off guard. We talked about it before, back when I came out in high school, but this felt different, more personal. I guess I always kind of knew, I said carefully. But I didn't really admit it to myself until I was, 15. What? He looked away, his jaw tight. Just curious. Trying to figure some stuff out. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. Like what? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood, brushing crumbs off his jeans. Come on, he said, his voice forced light. Let's walk. I followed him, my mind racing. What was he trying to figure out? Was it about Sophie or something else? The park was alive with people. Families, couples, friends. But all I could see was Liam, the way his shoulders hunched slightly, like he was carrying something heavy. As we walked, the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the grass. And then, out of nowhere, Liam stopped, turning to face me. His hand brushed mine, just for a second, but it was enough to send my heart into overdrive. Ezra, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I think I'm scared. Scared of what? I asked, my voice barely steady. Liam's hand was still close to mine, his fingers twitching like he wanted to reach out but couldn't. The park around us seemed to fade, the laughter of kids and the hum of distant traffic dissolving into a distant hum. He looked down, his jaw working. I don't know how to say this without sounding messed up, He took a deep breath, his eyes flicking to mine, then away. I've been thinking about you. A lot. And it's freaking me out. My heart stopped, then slammed into my ribs. I wanted to ask a million questions. What do you mean? Thinking how? Since when? But all I could manage was, me? He nodded, his face flushed. Yeah, like more than I should. More than I'm supposed to. The world tilted. I'd spent years dreaming of a moment like this, but now that it was here, it felt like stepping onto thin ice. Liam, I said, my voice hoarse, what are you saying? He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration palpable. I don't know, okay? That day at the beach, when you grabbed my arm, it felt different. Like I saw you for the first time. And now I can't stop thinking about it, about you. I couldn't breathe. This was everything I'd wanted, but it was wrapped in so much uncertainty it felt like a trap. You're straight, I said, the words tasting bitter. You've always been straight. I know, he snapped, then softened, his shoulders slumping. I know, but maybe I'm not. Or maybe I'm just confused. I don't know, Ezra. All I know is I can't stop thinking about you, and it's driving me crazy. The air between us crackled, heavy with everything unsaid. I wanted to reach for him, to pull him close and tell him it was okay, that we could figure this out together. But fear held me back. Fear of ruining what we had. Fear of him changing his mind. Fear of getting my heart broken. Liam, I said finally, my voice shaking. You don't have to figure it all out right now. It's okay to be confused. He looked at me, his eyes raw with emotion. But what if I hurt you? What if I mess this up? The vulnerability in his voice broke something in me. I took a step closer, close enough to feel the heat of him. You won't, I said, even though I wasn't sure I believed it. We'll figure it out. Together. For a moment, he just stared at me, his chest rising and falling. Then, slowly, he reached out, his fingers brushing mine. It was tentative, almost shy, but it sent a shockwave through me. I curled my fingers around his, holding on like he was the only thing keeping me grounded. Okay, he whispered. Together. We stood there, hands linked, the world around us forgotten. It wasn't a declaration of love, not yet, but it was something, a crack in the wall between us, a step toward something new. The next few weeks were a strange dance of hope and hesitation. Liam was still Liam, goofy, kind, infuriatingly charming. But there was a new undercurrent to our friendship, a quiet intensity that made every glance, every touch, feel electric. We didn't talk about the park, not directly, but it was there in the way he'd linger when our shoulders brushed, the way his eyes would find mine when he thought I wasn't looking. I threw myself into my art, channeling the chaos of my feelings into bold strokes and vibrant colors. The gallery in Oakland had scheduled a meeting, and I was working on a new series, paintings of the ocean, of moments caught in time, of two figures standing on the edge of something vast. Liam was my muse, though I'd never admit it to him. Not yet. One evening, as I was cleaning my brushes, Liam came home with a pizza and a grin. Thought we could have a chill night, he said, setting the box on the coffee table. No deep talks, just us. I laughed, grateful for the lightness. Deal. But I'm picking the movie. We ended up watching some cheesy action flick, the kind we used to love as kids. Halfway through, Liam shifted closer, his thigh pressed against mine. I froze, my heart racing, but I didn't move away. Neither did he. When the movie ended, he didn't get up. Instead, he turned to me, his expression soft. "Easy, can I try something?" My mouth went dry. Try what? He didn't answer with words. Instead, he leaned in, slow enough that I could have stopped him, but I didn't. His lips brushed mine, tentative at first, then firmer, like he was testing the waters. It was soft, clumsy, perfect. My hands found his face, pulling him closer, and for a moment, the world was just us. His warmth, his breath, the taste of him. When we pulled apart, his eyes were wide, his cheeks flushed. "Was that okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I laughed, breathless. "Yeah, more than okay." He smiled, a real smile this time, and leaned his forehead against mine. I'm still figuring this out, he said. But I want to. With you. My heart swelled, but there was a shadow of doubt in the back of my mind. Liam was still finding himself, and I was all in, had been for years. What if he changed his mind? What if this was just a phase? But as he laced his fingers with mine, I pushed the fear away. For now, this was enough. For now, we were enough. The next morning, I woke up to a text from the gallery. They wanted to feature my work in a group show. It was the kind of opportunity I'd been dreaming of, but all I could think about was Liam, asleep in the next room, and the kiss that had changed everything. I found him in the kitchen, making coffee, his hair a mess. "Morning," he said, his smile shy but warm. "Morning," I echoed, my chest tight with hope. "You want to come with me to Oakland next week? For the gallery thing?" His eyes lit up. "Hell yeah. I'm your biggest fan, remember?" I laughed, but inside, I was soaring. Maybe this was the start of something real. Maybe, just maybe, we could make this work. The gallery in Oakland was a sleek, industrial space with exposed brick walls and polished concrete floors. My paintings hung alongside works by other young artists, their colors vibrant under the soft lighting. I was a bundle of nerves, adjusting my tie for the 10th time as Liam stood beside me, looking unfairly good in a button-down shirt. "You're gonna steal the show," he whispered, nudging me with his elbow. His confidence was infectious, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong here, that I was an imposter among real artists. The crowd was a mix of art enthusiasts, collectors, and hipsters sipping overpriced wine. I mingled as best I could, answering questions about my process, but my eyes kept drifting to Liam. He was charming the room, talking up my work to anyone who'd listen, his pride in me so genuine it made my chest ache. At one point, a curator pulled me aside to discuss a potential solo show. It was a dream come true, but as we talked, I noticed Liam across the room, his smile fading as he watched me. When I rejoined him, he was quieter, his usual energy dimmed. "You okay?" I asked, touching his arm. He nodded, but his eyes were distant. "Yeah, just proud of you, man. This is big." There was something in his voice I couldn't place, something that sounded like fear. I wanted to press him, but the crowd swept us up again, and the moment passed. Back home, the high of the gallery faded into something heavier. Liam was distant, spending more time on his phone, his laughter less frequent. I tried to give him space, but every day felt like a step backward, like the kiss we'd shared was a dream slipping away. One night, I found him on the couch, staring at his laptop. "What's up?" I asked, sitting beside him. He hesitated, then turned the screen toward me. It was an email from Sophie, asking to meet up. "She wants to talk," he said, his voice flat. "Says she misses me." My stomach dropped. "What do you want to do?" He closed the laptop, rubbing his face. "I don't know, EZ. I thought I was done with her, but what if I'm wrong? What if I'm just confused about everything?" The words cut deeper than I expected. Everything included me, didn't it? I wanted to scream, to tell him to choose me, but I couldn't. Not when he looked so lost. "You should talk to her," I said, the words tasting like ash. "Figure out what you want." He looked at me, his eyes searching. "What about you? What do you want?" I wanted to tell him the truth, that I wanted him, all of him, forever. But instead, I shrugged. "I just want you to be happy." He didn't say anything, but the silence was deafening. The next day, he told me he was meeting Sophie for coffee. I nodded, pretending it didn't feel like my world was cracking. While he was gone, I threw myself into my art, painting until my hands ached. The canvas was a mess of blues and grays, a storm over the ocean, two figures barely visible in the chaos. It was us, I realized, caught in a tempest I wasn't sure we'd survive. When Liam came back, he was quiet, his eyes red-rimmed. "How'd it go?" I asked, bracing myself. He sat on the couch, staring at his hands. "She wants to get back together. Says she's changed, that we can make it work." My heart sank. "And what did you say?" I told her I needed time. He looked at me, his expression raw. I can't stop thinking about you, Ezra. But I'm scared I'm gonna screw us up. I wanted to hold him, to tell him it was okay to be scared, but the fear in his eyes mirrored my own. Take your time, I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. I'm not going anywhere. But as he nodded, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing him, that the tide was pulling him back to a life where I didn't fit. The next week was torture. Liam was distant, caught in his own head, and I was drowning in doubt. I kept busy with the gallery, preparing for the potential solo show, but every brushstroke felt like a confession I couldn't voice. One evening, I came home to find Liam packing a bag. Going somewhere. I asked, my voice tight. He didn't look at me. Yeah, I'm going to stay with my brother in Sacramento for a few days. I need to clear my head. My heart plummeted. Okay, I said, because what else could I say? Just let me know you're safe, all right? He nodded, his eyes meeting mine for a brief, agonizing moment. I will. I promise. And then he was gone, the apartment echoing with his absence. I stood in the living room, surrounded by my paintings, and felt the weight of everything we hadn't said. The ocean had always been my refuge, but now it felt like a reminder of everything I might lose. The apartment was too quiet without Liam. His absence was a physical thing, like a missing limb. I tried to fill the space with work, sketches, emails with the gallery, late-night coffee runs, but nothing could drown out the ache. Every corner of our home held memories. The couch where we'd kissed, the kitchen where we'd danced to bad pop songs, the beach where everything had changed. I texted him once, just to check in, but his reply was short. I'm okay. Just need time. I stared at those words until my eyes burned, wondering if I'd pushed him too far, if I'd been too open with my heart. The gallery kept me busy, at least. The curator, a sharp-eyed woman named Carla, was enthusiastic about my work, pushing me to refine my vision for the solo show. Your paintings have soul, she told me one afternoon, studying my latest piece. A turbulent seascape with two figures reaching for each other through the storm. There's a story here. Keep telling it. I nodded, but all I could think about was Liam. Was he telling his own story now with Sophie? Was he realizing that what happened between us was a mistake? A week passed, then two. I was starting to think he'd never come back when my phone buzzed with a new message. I'm coming home tomorrow. Can we talk? My heart leapt, but fear followed close behind. What did he want to talk about? I typed back a quick yeah, of course, then spent the rest of the night pacing, my mind spinning with possibilities. When Liam walked through the door the next day, he looked tired, his eyes shadowed but softer than they'd been. He dropped his bag by the couch and gave me a small smile. Hey, Easy. Hey, I said, my voice catching. You okay? He nodded, sitting down. Yeah, I think so. The silence stretched, heavy with everything we needed to say. I sat across from him, my hands clasped to keep them from shaking. So what's going on? He took a deep breath, his eyes meeting mine. I talked to my brother a lot. About everything. About Sophie, about us. He paused, his fingers tapping nervously. I told him about the kiss. About how I feel when I'm with you. My heart was in my throat. And he told me to stop overthinking it. He laughed, a shaky sound. He said if being with you makes me happy, then maybe that's enough. I couldn't speak. The hope I'd been suppressing surged, but I was still scared. Scared he'd change his mind. Scared this was too good to be true. Liam, I said finally, what do you want? Really? He looked at me, his eyes steady for the first time in weeks. I want you. I don't know what that means yet, or how it's going to work, but I want to try. With you. The words were a lifeline, pulling me out of the storm. I reached for his hand, and he met me halfway, his fingers warm and sure. Okay, I said, my voice breaking. Let's try. We didn't kiss, not then. Instead, we talked, really talked, for hours. About his confusion, his fear of losing himself, his realization that what he felt for me was real. About my years of loving him in silence, my terror of losing him. It wasn't a fairy tale, it was messy and raw, but it was ours. The next few days were tentative, like we were learning each other all over again. Liam was still figuring himself out, and I was still guarding my heart. But there were moments, his hand brushing mine as we cooked dinner, his laugh when I teased him about his terrible taste in music, that felt like promises. The gallery show was approaching, and Liam insisted on helping me prepare. He hauled canvases, offered opinions on layouts, and even convinced me to include the stormy seascape, the one that felt too personal. "It's you," he said, standing in front of it. "It's us." The night of the show, the gallery was packed. My paintings glowed under the lights, each one a piece of my heart. Liam was by my side, his presence steadying me as I navigated the crowd. At one point, Carla pulled me aside, her eyes bright. "You've got something special, Ezra. Keep pushing." I thanked her, but my eyes were on Liam, who was talking to a couple about my work, his face lit with pride. When he caught my gaze, he smiled, and for the first time, I let myself believe this could work. Later, as we walked home under the Oakland stars, Liam took my hand. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice soft. "And I'm sorry I made you wait." I squeezed his hand, my heart full. "You're worth it." The weeks after the gallery show were a delicate balance of hope and reality. Liam and I were trying, really trying, to navigate this new thing between us. There were moments of pure joy, late nights watching movies, our legs tangled on the couch, mornings when he'd bring me coffee, his smile sleepy and warm. But there were also moments of doubt, when I'd catch him staring into space, his brow furrowed, and I'd wonder if he was regretting this. We hadn't labeled what we were. Boyfriends? Partners? Something else? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but I was too afraid to push. Liam was still grappling with his identity, and I didn't want to scare him off by asking for too much too soon. One afternoon, we were at the park again, sitting on the same bench where he'd first admitted he was scared. The air was crisp, the first hint of fall creeping in. Liam was tossing a frisbee to a stray dog that had wandered over, his laughter bright and unguarded. "You're good with dogs," I said, watching him scratch the mutt's ears. He grinned. "Better than I am with people sometimes." He paused, then sat beside me, the dog curling up at his feet. "Easy, can I ask you something?" "Always." He hesitated, his fingers picking at a loose thread on his jeans. "Does it bother you that I'm still figuring myself out?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "It's not easy," I admitted. "I've known who I am for a while, so it's hard not knowing where you stand. But I get it. And I'm here." He looked at me, his eyes soft. "You're too good for me, you know that." I laughed, shoving his shoulder. "Don't get sappy on me, Carter." But he didn't laugh. Instead, he leaned in, kissing me softly, right there in the middle of the park. It was different from our first kiss, less tentative, more certain. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. "I'm trying, easy. I promise." "I know," I whispered, my heart full. That night, we went to a local queer bar with some of my art school friends. I'd been nervous about bringing Liam, worried he'd feel out of place, but he was a natural, charming everyone, dancing like an idiot, pulling me onto the floor when my favorite song came on. For the first time, I let myself imagine a future with him, not just as friends, but as something more. But the doubts crept back the next day when I overheard him on the phone with his brother. "I don't know, man," he was saying, his voice low. "It's a lot. I care about him, but what if I'm not enough?" I froze, my heart sinking. Was he talking about me? Was he still unsure? I slipped out of the apartment before he could see me, needing air, needing space. I ended up at the beach again, the same stretch of Santa Cruz where it all began. The waves were rougher today, mirroring the storm in my chest. I sat on the sand, sketching the horizon, trying to make sense of my feelings. I loved Liam, but love wasn't enough if he couldn't meet me halfway. I wanted to be patient, but how long could I wait? When I got home, Liam was waiting, his expression worried. "Where'd you go?" he asked, standing as I walked in. "Just needed to think," I said, setting my sketchbook down. He stepped closer, his eyes searching. Did I do something wrong? I shook my head, but the words spilled out before I could stop them. I heard you on the phone. With your brother. About not being enough. His face fell. Easy. That's not I wasn't saying I don't want this. I was saying I'm scared I'm not enough for you. You're so sure of yourself, and I'm still a mess. I stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. Liam, you're enough. You've always been enough. He closed the distance between us, pulling me into a hug. I don't want to lose you, he murmured against my shoulder. I'm trying so hard to get this right. I held him tight, my fears easing but not gone. We'll get there, I said. Together. Months passed, and our relationship settled into something real, something solid. Liam was still figuring himself out, but he was open about it, talking to me when the doubts crept in. We went to therapy together, not because we were broken, but because we wanted to build something that would last. He started identifying as bisexual, a label that felt right for him, and I watched him grow into it with a pride that made my heart ache. My solo show was a success, and Liam was there, cheering louder than anyone. He'd become my biggest supporter, not just in art, but in life. We moved to a new apartment, one with a bigger studio space for me and a balcony where Liam could strum his guitar. It wasn't perfect. There were still fights, still moments of doubt, but it was ours. One evening, as we sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Liam took my hand. You remember that day at the beach? He asked, his voice soft. How could I forget? I said, smiling. He looked at me, his eyes bright with something new, certainty. That was the day I started falling for you. I didn't know it then, but I think I've been falling ever since. My breath caught. Liam, I love you, Ezra, he said, his voice steady. I'm not scared anymore. Tears pricked my eyes as I leaned in, kissing him softly. I love you too. We sat there, wrapped in each other, the ocean breeze carrying the promise of tomorrow. The touch that had haunted me on that beach had become a tether, binding us together through the storms. We weren't perfect, but we were real, and that was enough.